Hello again, everybody. I'm sitting here with the week 1 torso that I worked up in the working example. And I've just gone through a few reviews with people of their assignments for week 1. And I just want to take a few minutes to talk to you guys about planes and forms and volumes in relation to the work that we're going to be doing over the next 10 weeks, right? Because a lot of the stuff that you'll see me doing in the videos is very kind of fluid and quite anatomically based, right? Because obviously anatomy is critical to success in figure sculpture. But anatomy rides on top of larger forms and volumes, right? And I want you guys to really appreciate and understand and take the time to observe volumes and silhouettes and contours in your sculpts, because the primary problem that I see popping up in people's work week to week is really a little bit of inattention to the kind of overall forms, the big forms of the body. Right, I think it's a big temptation in ZBrush to get in and just start detailing anatomy, right? And you see me doing it, but in my mind, the whole time that I'm in here detailing anatomy, there's kind of an underlying process going, which is kind of continually assessing the volumes that I'm creating, right? Because it's really easy to let things get out of control volumetrically when you're working, right? Because sometimes you just keep building up form, especially with the kind of the clay tubes technique that I use. It's very flexible, but if you just build and build and build without kind of consciously assessing the size of the stuff you're putting on, then you can quickly get an over-muscled character, right, or an over-muscled figure with everything just a little bit too bulbous and round. Okay, so what I want to do is just talk to you guys about kind of assessing silhouette and contours. We have a lot of images for our reference and for all the assignments in the course. And reference is great because it gives a kind of a concrete foundation to judge against. Otherwise, we're just kind of making things up out of the air, and you're not going to learn anything solid from that. You might learn a few techniques, but you're not going to get any better. You're not going to build up your mental library of what muscles look like in different articulations or different form, different contraction. Okay, so that's why we have the reference, to really observe carefully and cross-reference what we see with what we know anatomically. Right, because certainly we know all about the rectus abdominis, but sometimes when you're looking at reference, you're like, oh, look at this, he has the top of his six-pack up here, but look, in this particular pose, it's not blending together. It's kind of blending together. There's not a perfect striation going across. And when we observe things like that, that's the kind of stuff that we need to put into our model and just kind of really make a mental note in our mind that, yeah, every time I'm doing a six-pack, I don't need to go in and hyper detail every division, right? There's instances where some of this actually kind of softens against each other and blends in, right? So we can just go in and do things like that. And that's why we observe. Okay, so kind of when I'm working, I'm looking at I have an internal process, like I said, assessing volumes, but the other thing that I'm always looking at when I have reference is the key silhouettes, right? As we're looking down here, we want to kind of observe the ins and outs of all this and the planes and angles that they're creating, right? If we work our way around the external oblique up, you start to pick up a little bit of the lat expanding up, right? And you can look and see, and you need to just kind of refine these. But if you keep this all kind of in your mind when you're looking at these angles going around, you'll get closer to the finished result. This guy is quite tall and thin, right? So you're looking at these kind of forms, right? And just looking back at the model, there's still more refinement that I can do. right, to just kind of get this closer and closer just by assessing the silhouettes. Right, so as you're working, always keep in mind the silhouettes, right, and work, if you're like, oh, actually I need a little bit more latissimus dorsi coming across. Okay, so I get in and I go in maybe back with the clay tubes and build up some more lats and look at how it finishes up here. Kind of try to resolve that against the reference. This is a little bit too bulky up here. Take some of that down. Just kind of knock some of that off. Go back, find the view again, and assess if you've made any improvement. Right? Because in certain examples, and you'll see these in the reviews, people have just wild flares in and out in the top of their character. Almost something like, as much as that in some instances, or occasionally people have the opposite. Not quite like that, but you get the idea. And they're the kind of things that are resolved fairly easily when you just do a careful assessment of the silhouette, right? And that's kind of that's visual training, right? That's kind of training your visual acuity, and it's the kind of thing that comes with a lot of practice and drawing and also sculpting observation, right? Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, for the rest of this little walkthrough, I'm actually going to reduce this fairly worked up anatomical sculpt back to planes, right? I'm going to try to simplify for you guys the main planes of this so that you can see a little bit past the details that I have in here, right? Anatomy is all about is about big forms and big shapes, but then also the details. Sometimes it's hard to see past the details, right? So I'm just going to go in here and start to just highlight the planes of this, and hopefully you guys can use that to work back into your sculpts and start to modify those a little bit. And I'm just going to go in with some trim dynamic and maybe some flatten to really just highlight these, right? So the abs in general are mostly flat on this guy, right? Except for this lower section down here where it descends into down into the pubic symphysis. That's a big downward facing plane. All right, we get a little upward facing plane here. All right, so I'll just try to do that, and then mostly flat from there. Okay. As we go out to the sides, kind of work our way out, first I'll just kind of knock this back a little bit, show you kind of the border of the abs, because his abs have a little bit of thickness, right? So just kind of flatten this off, and you can kind of see a little bit of volume to them as they kind of descend down. So this is a little side plane. And we'll see how successful this is in the end, but it should be kind of instructive at least to talk through the process. Okay, so let me just kind of get in here and finish this. I'll leave this a little bit rough for now so I can get through the whole thing in real time. Okay, and then the external obliques themselves actually have almost a little front edge to them, right? His external obliques are pretty thick, and they create a kind of a frontward facing plane, just a little lip where their fibers finish right in here, something like that. And then we get kind of the big flat section on the sides, right? So I'll just kind of flatten this down. I'm not going to make this guy into a perfect cube, but I'm going to try to simplify the planes as far as possible, with it still making sense. Okay, as I work my way up the sides, the external obliques, I'm down here in the kind of the love handle area here, and that's great. You can see that he has more muscle mass down here. As we go up, there's a slight plane change as we get up into the rib cage. right? Underneath this external obliques here, we have the rib cage filling out some volume. So just be careful when you're working to these again are very subtle changes in plane here, but something to attend to. Okay, and then as we get to the top, kind of see the rib cage start to turn in a little bit, and you start to get a little bit of an upward facing plane, catching more highlights, just a little bit. All right, I hope in the end you guys will see some of the volumes of the rib cage coming out in this. Okay, just pull this down. Okay, so roughly side planes on both sides. Okay, for the serratus, I'm just going to actually try to flatten these guys out. I'll actually use the flatten brush instead of trimming them down. Actually, I might even just go in with clay tubes and just create a kind of a common volume for these. So we can kind of ignore the details, right? Because we don't want to worry about too much of the details of digitations. We would rather just be concerned with the mass that they create on both sides. So I'll just kind of fill in all the sausages. Okay, and you can see I don't have hotkeys for Trim Dynamic because it's not one of my go-to brushes, but I'm going to use it for this. Okay, so just a little volume for those on the side, and you'll see they should just pop out off of the rib cage, right? But always riding on top of the rib cage, right? If you're kind of looking at this mass as it goes down, you should see a step up where this where the serratus anterior come down. And then these kind of go up, and actually this plane of the serratus anterior ascends a little bit as it goes up and creates the wall, the inner wall of the armpit right in here. So serratus digits we see down here, but they also come up and fill in this gap between the pecs and the lats behind. Right, so I'm just going to try to extend that plane up there. We have it pretty successfully on this side, so no problems. And let me just see if I can Trim Dynamic is now hotkey number 9. So I can't actually stand going to the brush menu. It really bothers me. Okay, so I'll just flip the morph target back and forth, and hopefully you can see. If you go way back, it should be catch the same planes and highlights largely that you see between kind of fully detailed view and simplified view. Okay, so working our way up from this, the magic now and kind of a lot of the complexity of this exercise was resolving the flow of the pectoralis major muscle out to the arms, right, and the forms that it creates. If you remember anatomically, we have down here the abdominal kind of origin for the pecs. And this is going to go up, and it's going to kind of twist under up here, and this is going to create kind of the back wall of this mass that's going out to the arm. Right, and it's going to be a really flat plane, almost on the rib cage, sitting on the rib cage, very thin, down in this lower area that I'm just kind of flattening right now. Okay, so this is going to be kind of that wall. And then we're going to have, starting in this kind of transition area here between the abdominal section and the sternal section, we get kind of almost a frontward facing plane to this massive chest muscles going up. Right, it's gonna become kind of like a pyramid where it's kind of shooting out here with a few different legs, a few different bases. Okay, and something like this. These plane simplifications that I'm doing right here are somewhat arbitrary when you're trying to simplify something that's round into flat planes, but I'm trying to give it sense anatomically for you. Because, yeah, I mean, to make a circle a square is, you can do it any number of ways, but I'll just try to do it along these lines that make sense as far as origins and insertions. Okay, so I've just kind of flattened out a little plane in here where the chest muscles start to pop off the sternum, right? In fact, I'll even flatten in here just to highlight the transitions. Okay, and then we largely have the sternal mass sitting right in here, flowing outwards and fairly flat on the right side, screen right, but projecting forward on screen left arm. Remember, this mass is going up and it's going to start to converge. There's a little shelf at the top, right? It has to be a shelf. This goes up and starts to converge with the deltoid, front deltoid. Okay, and I'll just try to get these masses on this side as well. Okay, and now the deltoid, I'll just try to resolve this into something kind of roughly kind of square. I'll simplify this face a little bit so you can kind of see quite explicitly how the planes merge. And this is the flow, like we're really getting a lot of good flow out and over the biceps. And that's critical for getting this to be believable. Okay, and I just try to reduce this one to some very simple planes. And so I'll just rotate around to the top view now. As to try to just show you, I'll resolve the full deltoid before I get into the other stuff. Okay, so this guy, remember when he's up, he's going to be popping out over top, kind of blossoming out over top of the clavicle. Right, so this is the full front head, anterior head of the deltoid. And then I'll just simplify the medial head right here. Acromion, just flatten that guy down because that's really kind of an important little landmark. And get this guy going out. Should look like a triangle, more or less, right? I mean, deltoid is named after the Greek letter delta, right, which is just a triangle. Okay, and then I'm going to put the back plane of this coming back into the rear deltoid. In fact, I'll just simplify that all into one rear-facing plane. just to really get quite geometric about it all. Okay, so let's just do a little flip. So in essence, that's what we're looking at so far. Let's just resolve this side as well for the deltoid. So I'll just finish the chest muscles going up. Take some of that out. I think it pushed in a little bit far. Okay, and so to the top view of the deltoid. Excuse the jumping around. So I'm just going to plane off this this back edge, right? So this is kind of the angle of the anterior head. You have the square of the medial head where it comes off the acromion right here. And then again, we just flatten this all down. As it goes out, and then I'm going to unify a back head here, a back plane for the deltoid going back, and probably need another one just to capture the forms of the rear deltoid. Hopefully that gives you a sense of what's going on with the deltoids here. Okay. Let's go around the front and capture the latissimus going up into the arm, right? So latissimus and teres major coming up through here. And primarily we're going to see these as a front-facing plane in this anterior view, right? So this is kind of a nice little flare off the rib cage that catches some light from the front. You can see it here. And you can see it here. Okay, so let's just make this nice and square. Like so. And I'm going to make it square actually. I'm going to make it, give it a front side plane. And I'll just reduce this little bit here where it kind of overlaps the serratus anterior going down. Okay, so we have our front plane set up here. It's still kind of facing a little bit forward down in this little extension. And then it goes pretty thin as it goes further. Flatten this. Okay, kind of like so. Okay, little check. One thing that I want to capture that we haven't really got yet, which I kind of oversimplified, is a back kind of a deepening to the armpit in here. Right, because we have a little bit better on this side. But this this mass here really gets a strong overhang on this raised arm. So I just want to capture a little bit of that as it goes up, and then overlaps with the arms. Okay, I think that is decent for the front through there. Now let's just look at this stuff going around the back. I'm going to simplify the external obliques as they turn the corner and come back to grab onto the ribs. Right, so this back edge of the external obliques comes back and grabs onto the 12th and 11th ribs. And I'll just give a little downward facing plane where it pops out over the iliac crest. Again, this is a really, really round form, and so this is kind of an arbitrary division of geometry from round to flat. And we'll do the same here, though. Kind of try to get this going back up. You can see how it spirals its way up to the back ribs. Up like that. And just a little indication of the iliac crest. Unfortunately, and I've mentioned this in a few people's review videos, this guy, for being really lean, he's got a lot of fat stored in right here, kind of in this little area between what ends up being the origin of the lats and the spinal erectors. He's just got a little bundle of fat. I'm going to leave that alone for now. I'm going to work my way up to spinal erectors and just try to give you guys a sense of these. Simplify the masses. So really these could probably be well approximated by cylinders because they're just really, really round tubes going all the way up. I just need to fill this in a little bit so it's nice and smooth. Okay. And I'll just try to get in here and not cause too much harm. So this central mass of spinal erectors goes up, and then it pretty much gets overlapped by these lateral masses in this area, right? So this lateral mass, if I make it into a nice little extruded rectangle, do something like this. And they kind of orient themselves angular inward and angled and inward, that is. Okay. I might treat these spinal erectors as more of a triangle rather than a square. I hope you guys aren't getting too bored watching this. I could time lapse it, but I really want to kind of explain what I'm looking at and what I'm simplifying as I go. And we should finish in a finite amount of time too, so hopefully it's not too painful for you. Okay, so really those go up, and these are going up and they're going under the trapezius, right? And so the trapezius take up a little bit of their form, but generally they start to diminish in cross-section as they get higher. So we need to we don't need to attend too much to them as they go underneath the trapezius. Trapezius will have other things to worry about, like rhomboids, etc. Okay, I think pretty much we've done the easy part. Now we have to do the hard part, which is going to be to resolve all the stuff in the scapula and the upper back. First, let me just kind of take this down to back down into the hips, the gluteal region. it's all fairly continuous down there. Like I said, he's got a lot of fat in there that makes a nice smooth transition, at least on the right side. On the left side, we still have a little bit of, because of the twist, we have a little bit of compression in the external obliques. Okay, and again, a little bit arbitrary where these planes are going in on the back sides, a little bit more explicit. Like there's a nice flat plane down here along the gluteal muscles and where the greater trochanter goes in. Okay, kind of see the curve of all of that. And let me just flatten out this side, and then we'll work our way up to the strong finish up in the upper back. Front plane coming down here, the front of the thigh. This, as you remember, or you will soon see, is sartorius and tensor fasciae latae coming off. Just flatten it on both sides. Okay, and now let's just get to the back. I'll just pull up this reference for the back. Okay, I'm going to simplify this area. I'm not going to worry about the ribs. This is going to become just the back of the rib cage. And I just want to keep very definite the transition between that and the spinal erectors, right? Because they live in different planes and they look slightly different. So you should see a distinction between spinal erector mass and ribs. Just carve that a little bit. Okay, coming down here, we've kind of lost it, but you have the volume of the serratus anterior that should be coming through. So I'm just actually going to pop this out a little bit, not entirely artificially, but again, continuous from here up to the back of the scapula, back of the bottom border of the scapula. All right, so we should start to see a little bit of a plane in here, which is coincident with this edge. And I'll just simplify it down. Okay, moving forward, trapezius. Should be pretty flat. Just kind of work our way up the spine. You're going to have kind of the angle of the rhomboids coming in. Just kind of break in the rib cage where it kind of changes direction in the back and goes towards the spine. It's filled in with all the spinal erectors and other good things, including trapezius. And on the trapezius on this side, you can see there's a big plane change. It's coming from the rhomboids, passing up underneath them. Right. I just need to put a little bit more in here probably, just to get this looking right. Okay, I'm not going to do too much. I'm not going to put too many details in here because I don't want to make it over detailed, but I just want to capture some of the important forms. Okay, largely as we kind of work our way outward from there, I'll try to capture the spine of the scapula because that's critical. Anybody who's been on the anatomy course knows that spine of the scapula is magic for working on the back. Largely everything on the plate of the scapula on this guy in this particular pose is fairly unified into a plane up until we get more or less to the rear deltoid coming back. Right, so I'll just try to make this a little bit flatter. And why is it all unified? Well, it's kind of unified because all of this stuff, infraspinatus and teres major, is stretched pretty thin in this pose. Right, so it's becoming very neutral and a little bit inert, all the planes of the scapula. Right, so as long as we capture this kind of transition up here where teres major comes across, to go up to the underside, we're in pretty good shape. Okay, spine of the scapula is interesting. In here, and it's pretty much giving us this block of trapezius coming off. And a plane here going all the way back to the spine. And then in here we have the tendinous area, right? Everybody from the anatomy course knows that this is all flat and inert there. A big tendinous expansion that sits kind of over top of what ends up being the 7th cervical vertebra. Okay, getting closer, guys, getting closer, guys and gals. Rear deltoid. This is the end of its fibers, right? So its fibers are passing into tendon that's going back to the spine. In here, not enough detail, not enough form for us to make a big deal about that tendinous area, but certainly the body of the muscle fibers need to be highlighted, and the planes that they set up. This is going to be, again, reducing it to something simplified, might work like this. Like the other things on the scapula, the rear deltoid is also pulled very thin in this pose, right? It's kind of at its most stretched when it goes forward like this. Put a little bit of volume back on this face of the trapezius of the deltoid, and put a little bit of volume back onto the acromion, just so you can see, you can look and appreciate that it's not as deep as I just had it. So just put some back, flatten it off. we should be pretty good. And we'll finish off the trapezius up here. So as the trapezius kind of gets out to the acromion, this is where we start to see it working more. This is actually, this little branch here is flexing to help kind of pull the arm up. And that's why we're seeing this this little tendinous division, or this little division in the muscle body. Because part is working and part is relaxed. Okay, and then the rest of it is just kind of a plane that's transitioning up. Okay, on the far side, his scapula, as you'll notice in this week's exercise, is doing considerably more rotation. Right, he has a little bit of asymmetry in his scapulohumeral rhythm. Right, so we need to just be aware that this angle is probably quite a bit steeper than this angle. Just define the plane of the back head of the rear deltoid, and then here where the fibers terminate and it picks up its tendon, then kind of a top facing plane that goes out and converges with the medial head. And let me just put a little bit more volume in there so it's a little bit more uniform. Let's just do a quick toggle. So hopefully things are making sense. Now onto the scapula again. Again, I'm going to more or less unify stuff on the body of the scapula, even down to the teres major. Might put a little bit extra, just a little bit of a plane change in here. But in neither of these poses is it really popping out as much as it's able to in other poses. Okay, and now I'll just kind of highlight the transition between rear deltoid back here and what ends up being the triceps, and in this instance the long head of the tricep, going back and in. And just try to get some sense of the overlap of these two. Right? Remember, the long head is coming back to the scapula. Teres major and latissimus dorsi are going in front. So I'll just try to capture that interlock for you. Some of that, and a little bit tricky, but hopefully you get the idea in the end. And I'm just going to unify the rest of the body of the triceps, right? So the lateral head and the long head, just make it into one mass, one plane, pass it out. and flatten off kind of the, so do that. Flatten off the outside of the arm, just where deltoid finishes and brachialis picks up. Just leave that as is. Again, what mass of the serratus anterior is down here, coming forward. Make sure we have a separate plane for that to just really highlight it coming forward into here. Right, so look at our serratus here, picking up this plane of the bottom edge of the body. Going back. And again, I'll make a little edge for the medial border of the scapula. Everybody's favorite landmark. And then, again, not wanting to go into too many details, but we need to capture some of this volume of the rhomboid. And a little sense that the trapezius is going over top of it. Almost there, guys and girls. Bear with me. Kind of a flat plane up here for the trapezius. It's kind of the medial border, kind of the spine of the scapula coming into the medial border right here. Just backfill this a little bit. And finish off up at the top. Just a little bit of tension coming off the fibers that are on the acromion. And that is roughly it. Let me just look around and see what I've missed. Let me finish the arms. And then we'll be done. So stay with me for another 5 minutes or so. So again, tricep, I'll just try to highlight this downward facing plane. Kind of the bottom of the long head. Coming back out to the scapula. Some people had this this arm misoriented a little bit, turned out a little bit further, so that this was facing less down and more out to the side. That kind of makes it hard to align the flow of the pecs outward. So orienting the twist of your humerus is pretty important. Okay, I'm just going to unify the entire length of the triceps here. And then I'll just reduce the biceps and the coracobrachialis to a couple of simplified planes. Again, be careful out here because what's happening is we're getting the overlap here between the pec muscles, pectoralis major, and the anterior head of the deltoid overlapping with the biceps. So you just want to capture, make sure you have that as a transition. Then out here, this is going to just represent this with a flat side plane, because this is, again, kind of where the deltoid ends and the brachialis picks up. Right, so it's more or less inert and kind of a broadly flat plane on the outside of the arm. Let's give the same treatment to this guy. I might just unify this coracobrachialis a little bit, keep it a little bit separate from the biceps. And again, into the outer plane. Lastly, this is it. When you start these kind of little projects, you have to take it to completion. I can't not finish the neck, because there's a couple important things like the sternocleidomastoid, which has to be done. This guy has a really prominent Adam's apple, but I've just reduced it to a flat plane. Sorry, man. All this is getting pretty tight quarters back in here. But pretty much you have the front edge, the front mass of the trapezius kind of blending down into the supraclavicular fossa, which is the space above the clavicle, in between the clavicle and the trapezius. Okay, that's approximate. Don't pay too much attention to that. Let me just get rid of his belly button, because it doesn't look nice and planar. And we'll call that more or less a day. Right, so, I hope that that was kind of instructive for you. Let me just toggle back and forth so you can see the reduction to planes. And offline, I might sharpen this up a little bit and make a little turntable for you guys to reference, just so you can look at it. And the nice thing about having a really nice reduced planar representation is your lights should do interesting things when you rotate them around. And you should be really well able to resolve what's important as far as the forms go. Right, something like that. Far easier to make it out than with all the details in. Obviously the details are important, but you've got to capture the forms underneath to allow the details to sit in the proper place. Okay, so that is a little bit of reducing this to planes. I'm just going to, I'll make another layer and just quickly carve out the rib cage, right? So when we're talking about the rib cage, we're looking at mass like this, kind of the bottom ribs coming down here. Then all that coming up and over. Right, this is kind of where the front planes come in, and then it wraps around. Anybody who's been on the anatomy course know that I talk about some simplifications from a guy named Gottfried Bams on the volumes of the rib cage, and I mentioned that it's a really good exercise to draw those. And the reason that you do those kind of drawing exercises is so that you can build up your mental kind of image, your X-ray vision, so that you can look through a form like this and see the underlying structure of the ribs and the rib cage. Because if you can't kind of visualize it mentally, then you probably don't have, well, you won't have a critical enough eye to resolve it when it comes to sculpting the forms in 3 dimensions. Okay, so both that and the pelvis are really useful to be able to draw as simplified forms. Okay, that's going to be the end of this one. Let me just get rid of this guy because that didn't make it look cool. And I'll just leave it here, and please let me know if you think this is useful, because I think it's probably a step that some of you can use to help put the big shapes back into your sculpts. Okay, thanks very much. See you again soon.